in and did chores, and so I was helping with dinner. My mom said, hey, can you cut the onions to help the salad? And so they make you cry. So I was like, there's got to be a better way for this. And I was like 5 years old, I think. So I went upstairs, got our goggles, came down and put them on. And so my mom saw that, and I remember her laughing and just saying like, oh, that's a great idea. She took a picture, which back then meant something because you have like 24, it's film, baby, you know? Yep. To me, that represents like being encouraged to be creative and to come up with solutions, and that being like rewarded and feeling like positive emotions associated with liking a creative idea or like trying to be creative. And so I love that picture because my mom, who's since passed, she passed away from ALS like a decade ago, but she passed away like 6 months before I ever released my first YouTube video.
Oh, wow.
Which I think is actually kind of cool because it's like you don't understand the measure of like the impact you have on a life, because now I'm reaching a lot of people with this message of like engineering and science and these things. She had no idea when she passed away that was like a big part of her legacy. And so I think it's a great example of like just do the right thing and be a good human and try and leave the world as good a place as you possibly can versus the way you found it. You never know the full measure of the impact you have, so just do it anyways, and it's the best possible. Like 2 years ago, like I just quit my job at Apple. You know what I mean? Like I quit Apple when I had like about 10 million subscribers. So when I first made my first YouTube video a decade ago with like the iPad in front, iPad in back, that was my first experience, I guess, with like, that's a cool feeling to put something out in the world and have people see it and get feedback that, yeah, this is pretty cool. Was like, I think I have more ideas. I think I'm just going to do a video every month. And I've pretty much been making a video a month ever since then. You're absolutely right. In the same way engineering is a feedback loop, and you build a thing, you test it, you tweak it. I think it's very, very analogous to creating content and seeing how people receive it. I would just caution, I think there is a danger too of being too involved in the feedback loop where you're kind of giving your power and like the future of the channel and the direction away to other people who are the people who are watching your content. Yeah. I think you need to know what they want kind of even before they do. And this is kind of like how Apple designs products, right? They're the forward thinkers, and they say like, I'm visionary enough to know if I make a video about squirrels. Like that's the squirrels is a great video where it's like, I would explain that to people and they'd be like, okay, yeah, your channel's definitely finally jumped the shark. Like, what are you thinking? When I'm like, I'm making a video about squirrels in my backyard. Like, just friends and family are like, good luck with that one. Every morning with the squirrels at 5 a.m. I had the vision in my head of like what that video, and I'm like, just trust me, it's gonna be a banger, you know? Okay, well, but it's kind of like the thing where it's like, right? Like, if I put out a survey to all my followers and say, what content do you want? I promise no one was said, we want to see you, what could you do with squirrels? You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, therefore, if you get too caught up in the feedback loop and it's like, well, I did this one video, so my whole channel needs to shift and that did well. Now I just need to be doing that thing. It's like, so I don't even try. And yeah, that's right. Yeah. Like I say on average, my videos take about a year to make. And so therefore right now I'm currently working on like 9 or 10 videos. Yeah. One of the first things I think about is like, kind of what's the title, thumbnail? How can I explain this in 3 sentences? If I can't explain it in like 1 to 3 sentences to you where you're like, dope, that's a cool idea. It's not it. For me, it doesn't work for my channel because I'm putting something out next month. It's all relative. Yeah. Like I just kind of feel like you know a good idea when you have it. And there's ideas that I'm like, no, that's not big enough. That's not, and I won't do it. But it's not like I've gone down that track for 5 months and then I scrap it. Like the elephant toothpaste videos where it's like, those are very risky. We spend a lot of money, go out there, film them. You know, one of them, it blew out the bottom of it and it failed technically. But I leaned into that failure. And when before it went up, I was making sure to look to the camera like, this may not work. We're not sure. And we kind of leaned into it. And that became part of the story. Failure, but we learned and it was cool. So that's my process is like, have general bullet points. At the end of the day, though, you go out and film the thing and then you figure out how to make the story work. There's always a way to make the story work. Always, always, always. I always wanted to be on the blog Gizmodo.
Really?
It's just like kind of funny.
Wow.
And then I had that Halloween costume that I took to a party, but I have an iPad in front, iPad in back. You do a FaceTime chat. It looks like you have a hole in your body. And people at the party were like, oh, they liked it. That's cool. They wanted to take pictures. And so when I got home, I was like, I just handed my wife my phone. I was like, hey, just take a quick video. And then I uploaded it. And the next day, you know, front page of CNN, and a million views. And I was like, oh. And then I got on Gizmodo. So I'm like, I've done it. I've done it. You know, this is an example of another idea I had where you take those Bucky balls, those little magnetic silver balls, Neo balls or whatever. And if you draw on a magnetic whiteboard a target, you can play darts with those magnets. So it was like, I know. Yeah, not a Mark Rober thing here. You guys clearly aren't impressed. Roll the clip.
Didn't react to that.
You could throw it super hard. Behind the back. Up top. And then I did like, I think how to film animals at a zoo with like, use the front facing camera on your phone. You just stick it up to the glass and they look at, they see their own reflection and they go up and look at it and you can hit record and get that. So like, I really like the idea of using junk you have lying around your house to like make a concept because it just feels so approachable and obtainable and inspires people that like, wait, I have stuff around my house. Like, what could I do? So anytime there's the option of like, let me just buy the expensive thing off the shelf and save me a little bit of time and just have it done versus let me make it myself with a little bit of duct tape and popsicle sticks and a motor that you find in this RC car.
Right.
I will go the latter every single time because it just feels more obtainable for other people to have their own ideas, you know, and it kind of breeds that kind of authenticity thing. It's not just like I just throw a bunch of money at this thing and it exists. It's like I'm just a dude in his backyard making videos, you know. The funny story about that is that was the first video I made at Apple. And when I went to Apple, I think I had like something like 300,000 subscribers. And they're like, oh, by the way, you can't make any more YouTube videos. And I'm like, you guys asked me to come work for you. Like they had approached me. I'm like, I'm not going to.
Because of your YouTube videos.
No, not all. I was like, no, like that's not an option. So they're like, fine, you can, but wait like 3 months. I was like, besides, guys, you have nothing to worry about. Like my video doesn't get that many views. So literally the first video working at Apple, I did that watermelon one and it had like 30 million views in like 4 days. And so I was like, like,
did they say anything?
No, but it was like it was always weird with them, with my channel. Cause like when I first went on Kimmel asked me to go on and like, after I'd been there maybe 8 months and it made it all the way up to like a senior VP, one level below Tim Cook. And the response was like, we should be focused on making great products. So it wasn't like an actual no, but it was like clear that they didn't want it.
Yeah.
And then I was like, dude, you can't tell me what to do on my weekends. Like as long as I don't say I work for Apple, which I was never going to, you can't tell me I can't kayak. So you can't tell me I can't go on Kimmel. So I just did it, which obviously was a very good decision because like we're very good friends now. And it was like, that's been just a lovely relationship on a lot of different fronts. So it's like, I'm glad I didn't listen to them. And then eventually it did get leaked. I worked there. There was a patent. This is all public, so I can kind of talk about it. But it's like, there's a patent about using virtual reality in self-driving cars. And I was like the lead author on the patent. And like a bunch of places covered it and said, this is like the patent of the decade. Like that's what like one of the Apple Mac rumors said. This is like a crazy patent, blah, blah, blah. But no one noticed I was the lead author. And I was notable enough at that time. They should notice. And then a year later, Variety, I don't know how, somehow realized my name was on that. And then they leaked the story and it was a thing. And for about a week, all my employees, because it said like YouTube megastar Mark Rober, where all my buddies are like, oh, you're a megastar. And so they were like harassing me at Apple. But it was like, it was kind of nice that I was like out, that I work for Apple, because then I just didn't feel this like, oh my gosh, this secret's going to leak. And then Apple's going to be super pissed.
Right.
And so in the end, it was overblown. It wasn't a big thing. Everyone still says former NASA engineer. I kept telling Apple that. I'm like, nobody cares that I work for Apple. It's way cooler that I work for NASA. So first of all, I'll say, and like, I don't think anyone who's watching these, I didn't say this for a long time because people didn't know like what kind of money you can make on YouTube, but it's like probably for at least 2.5 years, I was making more money on YouTube than I was at Apple before I quit. You know what I mean? So it wasn't necessarily like a financial, part of it was a financial thing, but you're exactly right. Like, I'm a conservative engineer. I would say I'm a reluctant leader. I'm a reluctant, like, I will eventually do it if I have to, but like the idea of just like creating a massive team and all this stuff, it's like, man, the more I could keep it, is just like, I'm just a dude who's making these videos. It's a hobby. It's no big deal. It just helps my own brain. You know what I mean? Than feeling like this pressure. Let's say I quit when I had 100,000 subscribers and was like, all right, and you know what? I'm going to mortgage my house. I'm going to take out a loan and I'm going to hire 10 people. That is such a different frame of mind than I'm just a dude who works at this company who on my nights and weekends and spare time, you know, with even having a family and doing other stuff, like I'm going to work on these videos. It's a side hustle. It's like such a different mind frame. Yeah, 100%. And also like all my buddies at Apple thought it was so cool. Like I had a senior VP call me into his office just because like his kids, he'd seen the videos and he thought it was really interesting and cool. And he wanted to say like, hey, I like this stuff, you know? And so like literally at work, I was getting more opportunities because of the YouTube stuff, you know? That idea.
That's interesting.
Specifically that patent about, again, that's public, so I can say this, but using virtual reality and self-driving cars that like I was the lead author on, like that literally came because one of the managers said, hey, you're doing all these cool ideas for your own personal YouTube stuff. What's your cool idea? What's your banger idea you're going to do for Apple? And it was like 3 weeks later, I was sitting in a meeting, like getting some training on some finite element analysis. And I was like, I had this idea and I'm like, I started shaking because like immediately, like most of the ideas, and it's pretty extensive, a lot of different variations, is came within like, I'd say 15 minutes. And I just, it was a challenge from the folks at Apple to do more YouTube-y stuff for Apple, you know? And it turned out to be, I think, like a good thing. I do know that in the last 7 years or something like that, I don't think I have any videos, if you discount the live stream, with less than 10 million views or something. Because over time they get more. Okay. Yeah, the Super Mario effect is basically like, no one ever plays Super Mario Brothers or some video game for the first time, falls into a pit and just like, oh my gosh, I fell into a pit, I failed, how embarrassing, I never want to play this game again. You're like, no, okay, crap, there's a pit right there. Okay, next time I'm going to come a little bit faster, I'm going to jump a little earlier. You immediately learn from the failure and you're like stoked to try again. And so that's very much my philosophy. If you can gamify your challenges and think of them like a video game, you can learn so much more, you can have more success and have fun while doing it. And by the way, this isn't just like me making this stuff up. I actually gave a challenge to my subscribers where we said, hey, here's a coding puzzle. I want to see if anyone could learn to code. And like 50,000 people did it. And the truth was there was like two versions of that test. One where you took away 5 points. They started with 200 points if you failed, and one where you didn't lose any points. And you're like, well, what are these points, Mark? They're nothing. They're like fake, meaningless internet points that you don't get anything. You don't redeem them for anything. You just got -5 points or you didn't lose any. And the people who got -5 points, statistically, significantly, they had success 16% less often.
Yeah.
Which is like bonkers. And then when you looked at that, the reason they did is they tried a total of 5 times on average. The people who didn't lose points tried on average 12 times, which is like, those are bonkers results. And clearly they saw it as failure and getting points off, whereas the other people didn't see it as failure and they wanted to try again to solve it. They were focused on winning and defeating this thing and having success, whereas the others were so focused, and the thing we reinforced them was the failure aspect. And like that one difference in how you just conceptualize the challenge made all the difference. Disagree. You know, at the beginning I had 2 iPads. That was my video.
Right.
My next video was like magnetic balls on a whiteboard.
Right.
My next one was just like turn your phone around and put it up to this thing at the zoo, right? I didn't start with unlimited. Now I have resources, and in some ways it's a competitive advantage. I think Jimmy would say the same thing. If you told us we can only spend $5,000 on a video, fine, $1,000 on a video, and you put me and Mr. Beast with 100 other people, I would guarantee that the 2 videos we put out, put us on a channel, have someone else on camera, and I think the way we would approach it would be, I think we'd be in the top percentage of people who had that $1,000 and did it. I had to boil my mission statement down at this point, like what I'm about. It's like getting folks, especially the young folks, stoked about like science and education. You know, when I was young, you had Mr. Wizard's World and like Bill Nye, but you didn't have any cool engineers. I didn't really even know really what an engineer was when I was the age of like a lot of the viewers of my channel. So to be like a guy who's like trying to be aspirational to these kids, and it's also like if something doesn't exist and you're an engineer, you can just freaking will it into existence. Right. That's the closest thing we have to a superpower. And stories are the closest thing to magic we have in this world. So it's like you combine those two things. I think as a kid, it just, I love that I'm able to do that, and that resonates with some kids. So it's like, it's the carrot approach, not the stick approach to learning. Because school could sometimes suck, and you're like, I hate this, and I'm not good at math. But if I can get you into the video with a catchy thumbnail, and all of a sudden you're learning about chemistry reactions, or how balls fly through the air and why, or what explosions are, and you've learned a bunch without realizing it, it's like, gotcha, I got you. So there is an element where it's like, yes, I am not physically designing the piece of the rover that goes to Mars or working on that thing for Apple that will touch a bunch of lives with this physical thing. But in my mind, it's like, it's a pretty huge net positive for what I'm doing now versus just what I was doing there. And now even with the Crunch Labs boxes where people physically are holding a product and building and having that experience where they're engaging not just their eyeballs, but their hands and viscerally getting into the trenches with me, like that totally scratches the itch. I would say even in some ways more than doing just at NASA and Apple. Because it's like my fingerprints are completely all over this versus being like one way I was able to make it the Super Mario effect and make it like this fun game is because it was my side hustle. There just wasn't pressure on it for me. For me, part of it was like the opportunity cost of like this thing I'd gone to school for. I had a graduate degree in. I really liked the company and my people I was working with. But I would say, dude, even if you have a job at some company, even if it's like it's not the most high paying thing and you don't love it, like the more it feels like a side hustle, the more you could keep doing that thing and then be stoked to get home and work on the thing and edit. I'm blown away by how much I was able to do on my own just with the passion and the excitement of it, you know? You know, if you want to destigmatize failure and not be so penalizing, you're like, well, in real life, there are points off because you don't have unlimited money. Well, stay with your normal job.
Right.
And that makes it so that there's no points off.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like that's a way to reduce the penalty of failure of a video that doesn't pop because it's like, you don't need this YouTube thing. It's just a fun thing that you can play around with in the same way that it's like, you don't get penalized in real life for failing on Super Mario Brothers. You don't get penalized because it's just your side hustle anyway. So who cares?
Right.
I mean, that's what I tell people, and they're like, "I want to make a YouTube channel." It's like, okay, why do you want to do it? And I don't know what the right reasons are for you, but I'll tell you two of the wrong reasons, which unfortunately is the two main reasons that I find people want to do it. They want to be rich or they want to be famous. There's a very, very small window of what you would consider success if those are your two metrics. Very few people get those two things to a high level. And even if you do, you're not going to be happy. You'll find out that wasn't actually what you were after. And this is like when a lot of people who commit suicide, who have money, who have like, they have fame, they're famous, they have a ton of money, they have adoration, they're super talented. And they're like, how could they do that when they had everything? And it's like, no, that's exactly when you do it. Because you realize that this thing you were chasing your whole time that you thought would give you happiness didn't. And so it's like, of course, at that point, you're like, oh, crap. Well, if these things didn't give me it, like nothing will. And so it's like, there's an analogy there for like starting YouTube to be rich and famous because you're chasing after something that isn't real. And even if you make it to the end of the rainbow, you'll realize like it was fool's gold in the first place. So if you want to, however, do YouTube to get better at a skill and to learn to tell stories better and to have it as a creative outlet and to make friends and to increase your community. Those are all great reasons. And then the window for success is so much bigger. There's so many ways to succeed at that aren't tied to exactly how many subscribers or views I have. Do you know what I mean? It's just like flipping it.